Welcome, Brock. Welcome back.
Hi, El. How you doing?
Good, good.
Hi,
So
hello.
I didn't prepare an intro, like a prayer or opening of any sort, or does anybody have anything you want to bring?
In fact, did I send one to you, Nikki? I thought I sent you an opening prayer.
Oh, I think that was from last week or something. We didn't
Yeah.
we didn't read that, did we? You say you have something, Brock?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Well, we're sitting. We're simply sitting.
Yes.
Feel. Just feel your life. Let your heart open and feel your life. Some of it will be folks that you love. And we're watching for the way. Our body is sitting, our heart is feeling, and our mind is watching for the way. People have been doing this for hundreds of thousands of years. Simply sitting, which means you're pausing from action. And then what should we do? Well, what should you do with the feelings? Well, feel them. Your feelings are the flow of your life, so feel your life. You don't have to fix any of that. You don't have to fight it. Just feel your life. And what are we supposed to do with this mind and all these thoughts? Okay, it's a visual. We're watching for what? Wisdom, kindness, madness. If it's crazy, it's good to know. If it's peaceful, it's good to know. So we're sitting, simply sitting, feeling our life and watching for the way. Simplest thing. Okay.
I like it. Thank you.
So let me tell you a little bit about this method. I've been teaching human spirituality in colleges and schools, and, clinics and centers and churches for I think 30 years. And before that, I toured around. I played music and mostly in churches and centers, and there was always some kind of ideas coming through. So basically think it's a good idea every once in a while just to dispense with the agenda altogether and allow people to, you know, take a second and ask themselves what is the question. And I'm not saying I have the answer to everything. I don't, but I often know how to find them, and that's pretty useful, skill set. So why don't you just take a second and turn selfward and let yourself wonder whatever it is that you've been wondering, and maybe let that become a question. And then we'll go around the circle. I always see this as a circle. I see everything as a circle. We'll go around the circle, and everybody can ask a question. We can maybe do 2 rounds in 30 minutes, maybe, or maybe it'll just be 1 round in 30 minutes. Doesn't matter. So take a second and gather a question. All right, who wants to go first? Charlie?
Yeah, I'll go first. Okay. I guess the question is, what is the best way for me to distribute my wealth?
Well, I don't have wealth really, but there's a little bit of money, and there's a house, little tiny house, little tiny bit of money, and I tend to think about those that I love. Like like my kids are okay, they're doing okay, and they don't call me much, but there's a couple of people that I think of as my heirs, and they're spiritual heirs. Like they're people who have taken a flame that I pass in their own way. It's not like they're like, adherents or disciples of mine or anything like that, but they're very talented and very what's the word, passionate, and they have some kind of clarity. And I admire those qualities greatly. And I want my legacy to further them. So I'm not saying you need to do it that way, but I'm just saying that when you're wondering how to give, I think one should give by one's love. Like if you're like me, you're getting hit on a lot by senatorial wannabes and congressional wannabes, and I really wish I could give a lot to all of them. But there's some of them I love them. I deeply love them. And why is that? Why don't I love all of them? Well, I do love all of them, but some of them I love special, and I give to them, little bits here and there, like $5 here and sometimes $2 here. And every once in a while more. But I let my love guide me in this. And I don't have a lot to leave, but it's enough to help somebody at a certain point. Like there's this one kid I really like. She's 20 something, and I helped her through I think I saved her life actually. She was in an abusive situation, and I helped her out of it. And I found her a lawyer and a therapist, and I got her into graduate school. And it's not like she calls me every week or anything. I haven't heard from her for a while, but I believe in her, and she has a deep sense of truth. And I just think at some point, a little bit of money could drop in her lap, and she could, maybe when she's 40 or something like that, she wants to take a year off and write a book or something like that. Maybe I could help with that a little bit, and that actually means a lot to me. That's legacy. So, and how do you choose who to love special? Well, it has to do with their light. Like if their light, kindles your light, or your light kindles their light, then there's this old saying in China that if you save somebody's life, you're bound to them forever. And there's a duty that goes along with that. And there's lots of ways to save people's lives. It's not necessarily that they're going to die and you keep them from dying. Sometimes it's just you save them from ruin, or you save them from, kids come to a Y and they can go left or they can go right. And if they go right, it's going to turn out good. And if they go left, it's not going to turn out well at all. And you help them with that. Okay, now there's a link there. There's a bond there. And I tend to love those people. So I'm saying I think when we're trying to decide who to give to, we should probably follow our heart. Trust our heart.
Okay, so what you did is demonstrate how you handle your wealth, and your end result is saying, follow my heart. Thank you. I've come up with a plan that came possibly out of my subjective or subconscious mind in my semi-dream state. So what I intend to do, or what I imagine I will do, I believe in wealth is more than money. It's time, it's talent. It includes money, assets. So here's the plan. I'm going to announce to each of my grandchildren to demonstrate to me through an essay how they would use their time, or how they would be good stewards of what I give them. And I'm forming a committee of their fathers, and I'll be the facilitator, and we'll determine from what they said, who will get dispersed, anything, or how much. And then there'll be a follow-up of maybe a year, and they'll have to demonstrate how they put it to use. How does that sound?
Classic. It sounds classic. Who's next? Who's next?
Utter silence.
I keep thinking Kevin's ready.
Okay, Kevin. All right,
Or
Laura.
Laura. Laura, go
Laura.
first.
I'll go. Um, my question that keeps coming up in my head is how much time do I have left and what do I want to do with it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, okay, it's got two parts, right? So the first part is we're not necessarily given to know how much time we have left. You can look at the genetics, you can look at your parents, and your health practices. Like maybe you eat better than your parents, so you might last a bit longer than they did. But and it isn't genetics is not destiny necessarily, but that gives you some clue. And um, there's personal karma, and then there's accidents, and things like that, which are not necessarily personal karma. So they can be collective karma, like warfare and accidents and epidemics. That might not be personal karma, it might be collective karma. And so there's a lot of mysterious factors in this. And I think it's probably best just to assume that you don't know how long you're going to live. And what do you want to do with it? All right. So here's something I learned from working with warriors. I worked with veterans for 5 years. And I taught mindfulness to traumatized veterans, and I was trying to, help them forgive themselves, and that did not happen. And so what we ended up doing was we found purpose, that whatever it is that happened in your life, you can find meaning and purpose in it, and then you can put that meaning and purpose into service. And they all got better, and I got better. And I'm not saying that we had a cure for PTSD or anything, but in fact, we found that no matter how, whatever's happened in your life, whatever has happened in your life, you can find meaning and purpose, and that will guide you. And you put it into service, and that will guide you on your way. And so the question is, what do I want to do with what's left? Right? I would refer you to purpose. And one way to think about this is the original intention, kind of a Zen idea. Our original intention is the intention we had before we were conceived and the intention we will have after we are cremated. And that's very mysterious. So it might not immediately come to mind. But to leave some space for that question, you know, to leave some space for that question to be answered is a powerful thing to do. It's like a vision quest. It's like you take like it wouldn't be crazy to give it a year. Like most significant things take one trip around the sun. So to give a year to clarifying what it is that is your original intention. This is not the intention that was given to you by your family or by your culture. This is the intention that was given to you by the universe itself. It's the intention you will have after you're cremated, the intention that you had before you were conceived. And so this gives us a deep sense of the the purpose, the meaning of our life. And in psychology, there's a in developmental psychology, there's this idea that at the end of our life, we're seeking integrity. We're looking for wholeness. And yet, like, well, I could have taken that job, but I took that job. I could have married that person, but I married that person. And it's good to come to peace with all that because there's a certain point where you can't really do anything about it anymore. So you might as well come to peace with it. But it's actually a gift. Like, okay, why did I do that? Why did I go that way? Why did I do that? Why did I go that way? And those questions, you review your life and that gives you a sense of, oh, what was that all about? Oh, okay. Like I'm starting to understand the purpose of my life. And I could say there's 27 purposes, which is okay, that's fine. But I think it's really useful to come up with the one overarching greater purpose to get clear about that. And that will be evolving. Like the language I use for the purpose of my life has evolved quite a bit over the last, few decades, but it really hasn't like changed into something else. It unfolds, it gets deeper, it gets clearer, but it doesn't suddenly change you know, there is a purpose, and it is kind of constant, you know. And I have unconsciously, more or less consciously, unconsciously devoted myself to it, you know. And and it can be trusted. So to take some time, maybe a year, and ask yourself, like, journal about it, maybe take a trip somewhere. You know, height is very important. Like in Tibet, people will meditate on heights, especially overlooking water. To like, you can't do that every day probably because you probably don't live next to a mountain with a view of the ocean every day, you know. But once or twice a year, I go up on a mountain with a view of the ocean, and I just sit there and I let my sense of destiny and meaning and purpose clarify. And I write things down and I try to distill it down to a single crystal word. Singularity is very powerful. Like like there are some people that they only have a single purpose, and their single purpose is their own ego. And those people can be very powerful, like terrifyingly powerful. Okay. But you can also use that same thing for good. Like somebody who's decided their own ego is the most important item in the universe can become terrifyingly powerful. But you can also use the same thing for good. Like you can say, okay, I have 27 purposes. I love this person. I love that person. I love this labor. I love that labor, you know? And you kind of try to get a sense of what's the overarching unity, the the original intention that drives all those things. And you know, and we're not trying to get it nailed down. We're just trying to allow it to unfold. That can be really powerful. And then when you get something that seems clear that you can believe in more than one day at a time, you know, some that something enduring, an enduring sense of purpose. When you get something like that, then it guides you and it guards you, and it comes from your spirit. Right? Who's next?
Charlie had a question.
Yeah, you see the question?
No,
Okay.
I do not see the question.
Ah, there it is.
Okay, I'm hearing an irritating beeping sound, like maybe somebody's hitting their microphone. Do any of you others hear that?
I'm hearing it. It's on Brock's side. There's just a little bit of an echo, and I
Yeah,
can't tell what's causing it.
okay.
You know, when you have another device or something nearby, sometimes there's an irritation.
I have another device. Let me see if I can set it down. I don't know how to shut it down. It won't shut down. Okay, I'm going to cover it up. Let's see if that helps.
Okay.
Who's next?
Well, I'm curious about your lineage. You keep talking about it, and I try to look it up, and it's like there's complexity in esotericism. So if you could just describe what you've studied and taught over the years.
Okay. Thank you. Well, wisdom. Sometimes it's called perennial wisdom or the primordial wisdom. Sometimes it's called the wisdom tradition. Helena Blavatsky called it the secret doctrine, which comes from Sanskrit Gupta Vidya, which means the secret teaching. Um, and also in Sanskrit, they called it Sanatana Dharma, which means the eternal religion or the perennial philosophy. Perennial philosophy. Aldous Huxley wrote a book called The Perennial Philosophy, which is a compilation of wisdom from the world, all cultures. And so my personal affiliation is with the tradition of called the ageless wisdom, which is another way to say perennial philosophy. And Helena Blavatsky was the first to bring it to the West. She was a Russian mystic, and she went up into Tibet and she met with the Lama, known as the Tibetan, and she wrote books for him for her whole life. And the secret doctrine was on the desk of Roosevelt and Einstein and a number of other. It was very, very widely known. It is not an easy book. It's an impossible book, but but it was the first move to bring the wisdom tradition out of the Himalayas into the West and ultimately America. And then there was Annie Besant, who was the successor of Helena Blavatsky. Annie Besant was partly responsible for the revolution, Gandhi's revolution that got the British Empire out of India. And she was instrumental in a number of revolutionary changes in the world. Really wonderful woman. She, um, helped found the Theosophical Society. Helena Blavatsky and Annie Besant founded the Theosophical Society, which has a center in California called Crotona, which is in Ojai. And then one of their students, Alice Bailey, was visited by the Tibetan when she was living. She was a young woman living in India. And well, first she was visited by another master who said, "We need you to, if you can, if you can stop being such a horrid person, we have some work for you to do." So she did some work on her character, and then she was visited by the Tibetan telepathically, and he wrote books through her for her whole life, like a bookshelf full of books. And a center was founded in Britain called Sundial House. The center was founded in Italy called Poggio, the hill of fire, Poggio del Fuoco, which means the hill of fire. And a center was founded in Ojai called Meditation Mount. And that's that's like the lineage of esotericism as it came into the West. And then there's some other people like Helena Roerich. Nicholas and Helena Roerich were Russian. Also, he was an archaeologist and I don't know what you call her, a humanitarian. They were both humanitarians, and he was an artist. And she wrote books for another master, and those books are called the Agni Yoga books, the Yoga of Fire. And so there's this worldwide tradition of wisdom. Like people say, well, all the religions are the same. The core ideals are tend to be pretty coherent. And it's called perennial because it cannot be destroyed. It's like the grass. You can't quite get rid of it. It keeps coming back. And it's in the religions, but it's also beyond the religions. Like it's within the religions and it drives them. But it gets lost as religions develop into cultural phenomena. But it's also beyond the religions because it's also called the primordial tradition, which means it's the first order of existence. It comes directly from the universe ultimately. And in my specific lineage, it descends from the masters. And the masters, the Buddha and the Christ would be the preeminent masters. And there are others. Like Yogananda talked about a personage called Babaji, who is thought to be thousands of years old. He's some kind of master. And an avatar appeared in India and eventually visited America called Meher Baba. And he was some of us think he was the avatar of synthesis, that he gathered together all the faiths. Like it's hard to tell. Was he, like Hindu, or was he Muslim, or was he Christian, or was he Buddhist? You really can't tell. So Meher Baba also has a center in Ojai. And he was the one who wrote that phrase, "Don't worry, be happy."
Oh,
And he was the one that the Who followed. The Who, he was the guru that the Who, like the Who wrote that rock opera called Tommy.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
see me, feel me,
yeah.
touch me, heal me. That's a song. It's a prayer to Meher Baba.
Interesting.
So these are masters. They're human. Buddha and the Christ are human. They're drawn from humanity, and they're somehow avataric. They're like more than human. So the idea of masters is the idea that humanity is perfectible, that one can eventually master the physical, the emotional, and the mental. And that idea is Ojai is steep. I live near Ojai. And I've
Mm.
lived around Ojai, much of my life. And Ojai is just steeped in that idea, the idea of the masters. And there's a lot of people in Ojai who never heard of the masters, and they don't care, they don't know anything about that. But the idea that there is a path, and Krishnamurti was, you know, selected by the masters, and he eventually broke away and did his own thing, which is fine. But the idea that there's a path, and it is in a way no path at all. Like it's not like you could write it down, but in a way it is one path. Like we all emerge from the universe, and we all return to the universe, and in a way that's the path. I'd say the central idea is the soul, that the universe is spirit and the individual is a soul, and there's a oneness of spirit and soul. There's I'll be done with this in about a second. There's a predicted personage that a Buddha, who is also a Christ, will appear around now. Some people think it's like in 30,000 years, but some of us think it's now. And this being is called Maitreya. And Maitreya could be translated as benevolence or loving kindness or friendliness. So the idea is that there's a Buddha that will appear who will actually operationalize, discrimination and compassion for this planet. And so Maitreya is expected, and that might come in lots of different ways. Some people think it's going to be a general inspiration of humanity, which I think we might be seeing. And then there's one name for the tradition is Shambhala. Like, you ever hear that song by Three Dog Night?
Yeah.
How does your light shine in the halls of Shambhala?
Yep.
Okay, that is somebody asked it to the Dalai Lama once. Somebody said, Your Holiness, isn't Shambhala just a myth? And he says, No, no, no. Teachings come from there. That's how we know it's real. So Dalai Lama believes in Shambhala. Shambhala means the abode of peace. It is a citadel of wisdom. It's like the treasure house, the reservoir, the repository of wisdom and kindness for this world. And it means the abode of peace. And so, Shambhala is one name for the tradition. One name for the appearance of the tradition is Maitreya. And then there's countless others, and some of them, are in totally different languages. So, yeah, that's the lineage, and I just like to call it the wisdom.
Interesting. Thank
And
you.
one way to manifest it is kindness. So
Yep.
try to advertise kindness every day.
Yep.
I have a question in chat. Please explain the difference between esoteric and exoteric.
Okay, well, esoteric means inner, and exoteric means outer. And it's not that outer is bad and inner is good. In Tibet, they say Nangpa and Dugpa. A mystical person would be a Nangpa, someone who is oriented inwardly. They're going to come from the depth. A not mystical person, like a materialistic person, would be called a Dugpa, because they're going to be oriented towards externals, like, lower chakra stuff, money, sex, and power. And a Nangpa, and a mystical person would be oriented upper chakras, like love and light. That makes it sound like, that exoteric is bad and esoteric is good. And I don't mean to say that. But esotericism is the science of the soul, which is an old word for consciousness. It's like a science of consciousness. And I met some transpersonal psychologists from the Soviet Union a long time ago, when it was still the Soviet Union. And they came to California, and I was assigned to meet with them. And so I met with them at the Russian River, and we were sitting by the Russian River, and we were talking, and they were talking about all, consciousness studies and spirituality. They were transpersonal psychologists, so they were interested in consciousness and spirituality, and they're Russian. And I said, well, what about the wisdom? What about the perennial philosophy? Do you guys know about that in Russia? And they were trying to translate it. I said, well, like the primordial tradition, the perennial tradition, the tradition of consciousness and spirituality that is rooted in humanity going back forever. It's in all continents. It's in all you know periods. And they're like, well, what's he talking about? What's he talking about? Because they didn't speak English very well, and I don't have any Russian at all. And then finally, someone said, "Oh, esoterikaya," and I went, "Wow." They made the connection. So they call it esotericism in Russia. And they said, yeah, there are rooms in the libraries and you can't open them. They're locked. It's illegal to enter those rooms in the libraries, but they know about it. So, yeah, esotericism is inward and exotericism is outward. And of course, you got to deal with both. Like I pay my taxes, you know, so you have to deal with both. But an esotericist is, focused into the depth of things. Who else?
Another question. Psychologist friend mentioned that a group of well-sophisticated psychologists, psychiatrists got together and come up with the number one trait that would influence them to vote for President Trump. And that number one trait is hate. Would you refer to that? Can we address that? What does it mean?
Okay. Yeah, well, there's a lot there. I think our only enemy is hatred. I think in the kingdom, the only sin is cruelty. So hatred, cruelty, and malice are a darkness, a madness that stalks humanity. And I think that's been here probably before we were here. And um, there's a trait called openness to experience, openness. And I had a friend who was like a not a fundamentalist, but a Orthodox religious person. I don't mean Greek Orthodox, but she's like a conventional religious Christian. And she was a good friend, a good person, and she helped people. And she was a teacher all her life, and kind of a wonderful person. But I would take her to movies every once in a while. Like I took her to see Gandhi, and I took her to see Kundun, which is a story of the Dalai Lama. Kundun, great movie by Martin Scorsese. Two great movies about universal spirituality, not necessarily Christian spirituality. And she was very impressed by those films. And then by the time we got home, she had talked herself out of it.
Wow.
Because it was different than her paradigm. She did not have openness. And we're still friends. I love her. She's a great person, but she's not comfortable with people who are different. She's not comfortable with immigrants. And she's not a hater, and she's not cruel, and she's not malicious, Malice, hatred, and cruelty, I think, are the line, But there are people who are not comfortable with change. The idea, oh yeah, like, gender difference is like they're really not comfortable with that. It scares them. And because their reality is there's a mindset or a worldview that they're quite fixed on, and they can be a good person. They can or it can go really bad. And if it gets infected by malice, hatred, and cruelty, then it gets really bad. And so there's a lot of people who are, supporting the regime. It's not a lot of people, actually. It's like around 30%. Like humanity is a bell curve. Everything is a bell curve, So there's a leading edge of, the masters are way out there, and the monsters are way out there. There's a trailing edge and a leading edge, and way out on the outliers, it's a difference between masters and monsters. But most people are kind of in the middle. And in the United States, about 30% of the people are heroically speaking for the truth that all beings are equal, you know, and that's about 30%. And some people are, kind of villainously arguing for the lie that some beings are better than other beings. Like maybe some beings are things, and it's okay for us to treat them as things, to use them as things, to hurt them if we need to. And that's probably about 30%. And Heather Cox Richardson, the historian, she says that really doesn't change. Like we're not going to get them to change their mind. Okay. So I identify with the heroic people who are advocating for the truth that all beings are equal. And most people are in the middle, and the people in the middle aren't brave enough to argue for the, liberty and justice thing, but they believe in it. About half of them believe in it, and about half of them are kind of wondering if maybe the regime is correct. But they're looking at some of the ineptitude and the harmfulness, and they're going, wait a minute, I didn't vote for that. I don't believe in that. And so they're kind of coming over this way. That's kind of what's happening. But there's this hardcore of people who are just fine with the idea of trafficking children. They don't have a problem with it. And that's probably not going to change. And we're going to have to learn to deal with that because they're going to be here. You might call them a little psychopathic, a little narcissistic, megalomaniacal, or supportive of megalomaniacal, leadership. And that we're going to have to be awake to that because that is not going away. And so I try to teach young people like this will come back. We will not. It will not prevail. It will fail. In Tibet, they say the gods will win and the demons will lose. And I like to translate that as the truth will win because truth is real, and the lies will fail because lies are not real. Like to say that somebody's not human and we can hurt them, that isn't true. So it will fail. It's going to be loud and, it's kind of noisy right now, but, and very dramatic, but it will fail, but it will come back because some people, their consciousness is kind of trailing edge. And ultimately humanity evolves and they will, evolve with everybody else. But we have to be much more vigilant than we have been.
Thank you.
Kevin, you got anything?
Well, question I've had, how do you love somebody when they're on your last nerve and you've just had enough?
Oh, well, okay. I'm not famous for having good boundaries in that regard because I believe we're supposed to love everyone. But I'm getting older and maybe I'm getting smarter, and I've decided that I don't want to be friends with psychopaths and narcissists and megalomaniacs anymore. So when people demonstrate that they're willing to harm me, I let them go. I'm not saying I'm good at this. Like I was attacked, not physically, but psychically a couple years ago, and I still kind of wish I could talk to that person and help them find their way, And part of me is like, no, that's dangerous. You don't even want to meet that person. If you see them, you should probably turn around and go the other way. So when people demonstrate, malice or hatred or cruelty towards yourself or anyone else, they're probably not good candidates for your friendship. Like I'm gonna make a guess that everybody here is intuitive and empathic, to some extent. And okay, that means you're creative and you're sensitive and you're authentic. You're trying to be authentic, and you're going to meet people who like you for those reasons because you're easy to feed on. You're easy to feed upon, and some people will be attracted to you because you're intuitive and empathic, but not because they love you, but because they can use you. And so if you're intuitive and empathic, you have to be you have to be guided and guarded. And I've learned to be vigilant. Like the gift of trauma is hypervigilance. Like trauma does a lot of things to us, But one of the things it gives us is hypervigilance. Like I got perimeter checks, like is there a monster in the house? This person I just let in into my circle, is this person like a monster? Are they? And I know there's this whole concept, there's no such thing as monsters, but there are monsters. There are people who will hurt you for the fun of it. They do exist. And when people get on your nerves and you say, hey, you're kind of bothering me with this thing you're doing, and they don't change, like if you tell them, I give people a couple times, like I'll say something to somebody, like, I'm not comfortable with this, and if I try that a couple times and it goes weird both times, I'm going to stop and I'm just going to distance myself from that person. Now, I got people that I love that drive me crazy, and they're good people and they still drive me crazy. I'm sure I drive them crazy, but if they say, hey, you really that's bothering me, okay, I will make some effort to shift it, to correct that because I love them and if you love people, you want them to be happy, you don't want to hurt them, of course. But some people you tell them, well, that's really bothering me. I'm not comfortable with that. And they won't stop. They might even tell you, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I'll stop. And then they don't stop. They're telling you something. They're telling you about themselves, that there's no conscience there and there's no empathy there. And they're just gonna, they're gonna keep going. And when people tell me that, I've learned to believe them. And they don't necessarily come out and say, yeah, I'm just gonna use you until you're gone. They don't say that, but they don't stop when you ask them to stop. Or they don't shift it when you say, hey, I kind of need us to shift this dynamic in our relationship. But people I love drive me crazy, so I'm sure I get on people's nerves, but it's about the intention. It's really about the intention. Some intention is benevolent and some intention is malevolent. And people will tell you, they'll show you. Actually, they'll tell you in the first paragraph. When you meet somebody, if you're listening, they will tell you in the first paragraph what they're all about. I used to do interviews and people would come into the interview. And if they talked about money in the first paragraph of the interview, then they're telling you that that's what they care about. And if they talked about power over others in the first paragraph, then I would realize, oh, that's why they're here. They're here to gain power over others. If they talk about sex in the first paragraph, that's not a good sign. So people will tell you, who they are pretty much right away. And over time, they'll show you, and you should believe them. Like, is it goodwill or is it ill will? There's the line. Anybody else? Who else? Teresa, you got anything?
I do. Thanks for asking. Um, I was thinking about our ministry and our community, and I'm wondering if there's any value to our community as it is right now, or do we need to do something different than we're currently doing? And I don't know how familiar you are with us, but we are a collective of like-minded but very diverse people who come together in order to share learning and to share various things, mostly community. But I find that it's difficult for us to attract people to us. And I'm wondering if there is something that we're missing, or if there is something in your experience that would help us in our goal of increasing our numbers and increasing our community.
Okay. Well, yeah, I definitely will engage with your question. I want to note that the dynamic is a little bit fraught because I'm not actually a member of your community, and I want to be appropriate and courteous to my host, and so I'm going to talk kind of generally, and then I'm going to get specific. Generally, energy follows thought. You've probably heard that energy follows thought. That's one of the axioms of magic. Like there's two axioms of magic. Hermes, who was Thoth in Egypt, and Mercury in Rome. Thoth, Hermes, Mercury. Probably was a human at some point and then was made into a god. Or he was a tradition, might not have been a single person. But anyways, as above, so below is the the basic law of magic, as above, so below. So the principle will govern the consequences. Above is principles, below is consequences. And so the principle of your system, whatever it is, it could be a nation, it could be a church, whatever it is, the principle of the system will govern the consequences of that system. Like the problems we have in America now are because we are not paying attention to liberty and justice for all. Liberty and justice for all are the principles of the United States of America, and we've never been very good at applying that. So the consequences get funky, and that's what we're dealing with. And what we need to do is return to the principle. And the other one is energy follows thought. But I like to translate that to intention directs energy. Like if you can get clear about, if you can become intentional about the principle, then that intention, that clarity will shape the consequences. The above, which is the principle, will begin to shape the consequences. Like up to now, money has followed desire. So we have all these really, really morally impaired monsters with all the money. Like most, except for Taylor Swift, most of the billionaires are really pretty sick. They're insane about themselves. They're egomaniacs. And Taylor Swift seems to have escaped that somehow. And but okay, up till now, money follows desire. So if your primary desire is to feed your own ego, you can make a lot of money. You'd be ruthless, vicious, corporate, executive, and you can make a lot of money, like serious money. Okay, but in the future, this is all shifting. In the future, money will follow the group's grasp of their own law. Money will follow purpose. Am I making sense? Do you follow me?
I don't think that money is our true goal. I think that our goal is prosperity in another way, prosperity in people, prosperity in contacts, prosperity and richness of thought.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the correct. Okay, so richness, like wealth is not simply money. Wealth is friends and liveliness and well, principle still holds. That is going to follow your group's grasp of its own law. Like the deva will serve your sense of purpose. Like the angels. Angels and deva, same thing really. Angels and deva will labor. They're already laboring. They're laboring to build whatever it is that you guys are clear about. And that's what's happening right now. That's what you have right now. Like I'm here right now and other things that are going on, and but if you get really clear about the deepest purpose of the Madonna ministry, then the angels will be able to build much more powerfully. They'll be able to create the sustenance in terms of money, but also friends and other kinds of prosperity and other kinds of goodness, all the goodness. And so it looks like a consensus. Like what's the one thing you can all agree on? And I'm going to suggest that in my experience, when groups start to get kind of diffuse, it usually happens in a couple of generations. Like the first generation is visionary and they establish something and the purpose is very clear. It's a vision. And second generation, the first generation dies and the second generation comes in and they start to carry it and they maybe hold it for, their lives. And then by the third generation, people are thinking, well, we could do something with this property, we could, and they start to, turn it into something else. They start to lose the vision. And that happens in systems. It has happened in the United States, and that's something that's what we have to deal with. We have to return to the original intention. And Thomas Jefferson was not a perfect person. None of those guys were, Benjamin Franklin seemed like a pretty integrous person, but they had serious ethical issues. But the intention is pretty clear. It's liberty and justice, freedom and justice, that's pretty clear. We could do that. So I'm going to suggest that you guys take a period, maybe a year, and quest for vision. And I'm going to suggest that you'll find it in your origins. Like if you go back to the original writings of whoever it is that started the Madonna ministry, and you know, there'll be a lot of noise like there is everywhere, but there'll also be some gems of clarity. And somebody asked me last time I spoke for y'all, somebody said, "Well, what do you suppose is the archetype for the Madonna ministry?" And I'm like, Madonna, I mean, the Madonna, the divine feminine. And I'm not sure everybody's, okay with that, but it's in your name, you know, the divine feminine. Okay, you have Kuan Yin, you have Sophia, you know, you have the Magdalene, you have the Virgin, like the Virgin of Guadalupe, all these virgins, the mothers, and okay, this is the time of the feminine. I mean, look, I mean, it's open season on girls. It's just, I can't, Jesus, I'm so horrified by the way many males behave. It's, I could tell you a story, but
Well, I
okay,
could tell you stories.
yeah, yeah, we could do that for a day or so. It's terrible. It's atrocious. It's atrocious. It's evil. It's evil. The way many males are going is evil. Okay, so Helena Roerich, who is one of the great esotericists, she wrote some books for the master known as Moria. They're called the Agni Yoga, Agni Yoga, the Yoga of Fire. She wrote some books for that master, and they're wonderful books. But she also was a humanitarian in her own right. And she said, this is the epoch of the woman. We're entering into the period of the feminine. And obviously, I mean, the masculinity has gone insane, it needs to be balanced. Like the head has gone kind of crazy. The heart needs to ground the head, the feminine needs to ground the masculine. And it's in your name. So I'm guessing that the original intention had something to do with divine feminine, even if the person that used that did it for the wrong reason. Like a lot of people in the early America, the Revolution and the Declaration and the Constitution, they were slavers. They were not impeccably, they were hypocrites. And yet liberty and justice is a really good idea. you know, all humans are created equal. That's a really good idea. So if you go back to the origins, you'll see that the divine had something to say there, even through imperfect people. And maybe your generation has a chance to clarify that finally, to help it to, manifest, because the principles need to rule the consequences. I'm sorry I started off saying money follows purpose. Yeah, money does follow. Money will follow purpose in the future. So will friendship. So will all good things. All good things will follow purpose because we have evolved out of pure materialism into some sense of spirituality. And so we're not just about, money, sex, and power, lower chakra nonsense. We have heart and we have love and we have mind and we have light. And since we have evolved, the Deva will respond to us differently. And our clarity and our passion are magical. Like if you have clarity in your mind about what you're doing, and you have passion in your heart about what you're doing, and you move your arms and legs in alignment with the clarity and the passion, something will create. The angels, the Deva will cooperate. And I'm feel moved to show you something. Like if I go like this, angels can see that. Or if I say, God bless you, angels can see that and they will work to make it real. Like if I do a blessing to someone, or I don't know, sometimes I go to a store or something like that and I really love what they're trying to do and I'll just do a little blessing as I go out the door. It's a big part of my priesthood. And but you don't have to be a priest, like in a way, you're all priests. We're all priests, priestesses. There's a tradition I think it's in San Francisco of the Magdalene. Like I'm not crazy about that movie, the Tom Hanks movie. I think they made it sound like the whole point was that Jesus and Mary had a child. I don't think that's important. Whether they had a child or not is not important. But the Magdalene was a great avatar in her own right. She was his best friend. In the Gnostic Gospels, he kissed her on the mouth. Doesn't mean they were lovers, but they loved each other very clearly. And she was the one who understood what he was saying. And she was the one who was there when he died. The rest of them ran except for John. John and Mary and Jesus's mother were the only disciples that were at the foot of the cross. Everybody else ran away. They betrayed him and they abandoned him, but Mary was there. Very dangerous. She was there, and then a day or so later, she goes to the sepulcher and she realizes he's not in there. And she sees the gardener or something. And she says, do you know where they've taken my master? And he says, Miriam. And she says, Rabboni. She's right there, just rises to it. Bam. And he says, and she makes her way to him and he says, you can't touch me. I'm not, you can't touch me right now.
And then you need to be seen.
And then she says, he says, go and tell the others. So she's the apostle to the apostles. Okay, and then she and I think Joseph of Arimathea, this is a legend. I think it's probably true. They made their way up into Europe and they went to France and she taught and healed there for a time. And then some people say she made her way to Britain and she taught and healed. And she wrote a gospel. It's called the Gospel of Mary. And Thomas wrote a gospel too. It's called the Gospel of Thomas. These things they're wisdom gospels. They didn't make it into the canon. They're not in the Bible, but wisdom gospel of Thomas and Mary, and there's one Philip, which I don't know very well. But okay, and there is a lineage in California that claims to be descended directly from Mary. I'm not saying you should join it or anything. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you are a lineage, that is named after the Madonna. And she's amazing too. Like an angel appears to her and says, well, we got this job for you. It's impossible and it's going to end really badly. And she says, behold, the handmaiden of the Lord. She rises right to it. Do you see that? The willingness. Willfulness is the problem. This is what Bill W. said in the 12 Steps, founder of the 12 Steps. He said, willfulness is the problem. The solution is willingness. And these women, like the Magdalene and like the Madonna, they were asked to do something and they said yes. It's astounding. It's miraculous. Like the woman at the well. He says, can you give me some water? And she goes, Jewish men don't talk to Samaritan women, And he says, well, if you knew, the water I was, had to offer, you'd never thirst again. And then he tells her life and she right there, she goes into town and she brings everybody, all the Samaritans to come see him. This is a great thing. It's a feminine thing. It's willingness, the capacity to be there. It's an amazing thing. So it's in your name, Madonna, so I'm guessing you'll find the clarity of purpose and meaning somewhere, it's already there. You don't have to make it. You don't have to create it. And the clearer we get about what our intention is, the more powerful it becomes. And the more singular, I'm gonna break one of my rules. I'm gonna talk about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is is probably the most powerful person in the world right now, even though he's insane. He's demented, he's depraved, and he's deranged. And he is the most powerful person in the world. Why is that? Because his intention is singular. It's him, me. My ego is the most important item in the universe, the only important item in the universe. That's what makes him so powerful. Okay, now he's a force of darkness, but you are forces of light. And the clearer you can get, the more consensus you can have about the purpose, the singular intention. Like I try to, really, if people ask me, what are you about? I got 27 words I can use, like wisdom and kindness and service, all this stuff, but really it's wisdom. That's that's powerful. Like really, my whole life is about wisdom. It's like the difference between being a bunch of flashlights and being a laser. It's coherent. If you can find what the original intention is, and develop a consensus about that, which is a worthy project, to talk about, like, we all said, I'm done. I'll be done in a second. We all said, I pledge allegiance to the flag, blah, 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 liberty and justice for all. 12 years I said that. 5 days a week, 12 years. I went to school, and we all did the pledges of allegiance every morning. We never once talked about liberty and justice for all. Not once ever did we talk about what would that be like? What would that take? Why aren't we there? Never talked about it. So to go back to the original documents and to find the core ideals, and talk about them and develop a singular consensus about it, that is very powerful.
Thank you, Brock. That's wonderful. I missed a lot of your talk because my thing crashed, but I'm on a portable. So I think that's a great idea. I love your enthusiasm. How about you leading us next week into rediscovering our purpose for being here as a Madonna ministry?
Well, if everybody still wants to do that next week, let me know and I'll show up and help. I can facilitate that conversation. But why don't you guys talk about whether you really want me to do that? And but I'd be glad to serve if called upon.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your enthusiastic explanation of your subject matter today, and I think you helped a lot of us. Thank you.
Okay. God bless.
Thank you. That was a great question, Terry. Save the best for last. All right.
Could somebody pray us out, please?
May I?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay. By all the holy names of God, and in the name of the Christ, may the Madonna ministry be blessed with light and with love, that it may serve the holy plan of God. May you be guided and may you be guarded. May you be protected and may you be comforted. May you be helped and may you be healed. This I ask in the name of the Christ. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you very much. Have a wonderful week, everybody.
Blessings.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.